Hello there. This still goes on, and it is being ignored by just about everyone within the UK establishment and the global establishment. The establishment is burying the issue of excess deaths in plain sight. It's just more proof that Westminster is a uniparty setup and that it controls the mainstream media. The ONS publishes weekly excess deaths data every Tuesday, and now, every Tuesday, we can see another large amount of people passing away early. The latest data shows the figures for the week ending the 23rd of June. That's week 25 of the year. And in the UK we saw 11,886 people passing away, but that number is 953 people dying above the 5-year average. That's 8.7% above the 5-year average. That's 953 excess deaths. This is happening now week after week, and the government gives not one jot. Either that, or they are covering something up. On top of the UK excess deaths, in England and Wales there were 882 excess deaths, 9.2% above the 5-year average, and it was 21.5% above average in private homes, 5% above in hospitals, and 2.2% above in care homes. Now, last week I showed you a graph of this year's data. Here it is updated. The red bars above the zero line show the level of excess deaths by week, and the red bars below the zero line show when there were fewer deaths than expected. And as you can see, that's a lot of excess deaths, running into the thousands on average every month. And the average as shown on the graph remains unchanged from last week at 7.9% above the norm. We're panicking over inflation at that rate, but not talking about this. Those 953 people's lives matter, and the thousands every month matter. Now you can see when there are dips on this graph, and when I see that, I'm always hoping that it's the end of this nasty situation, but then they keep spiking up again. And every time someone questioned it, out comes the conspiracy theorist tag. How can it be a conspiracy to use government's own data to question this? And why is there no debate allowed in Parliament over this? Why is there no investigation into this, nor any explanation for why it's happening? And I'll remind you, week 25 saw 953 more people dying than normal. Now, when I go out and about, I sometimes casually mention this to people, and they look at me quizzically and say, "What excess deaths?" And when I explain it to them, they then say how strange that is. And then when I say that the government is ignoring it, they look even more puzzled. But that's about as far as it goes. This situation also shows how disconnected people are from the news. Any news. Everyone may be on social media, but the vast majority, I think, are looking at family pics, pets, and what their mate ate last night in some restaurant, etc., or looking for things to sell and buy. And as social media is meant to cater for the things you as an individual want to see, it might not be serving serious subjects like this up for them to take a gander at. They publish the data brazenly in plain sight, in the knowledge it won't reach too many people because politicians and the press won't point it out to them. In any other context, the press would be all over this, especially where it's happening under a Tory government, but not a peep. It's obvious that the mainstream press is basically a propaganda arm of government. And newspapers need governments to advertise on their pages, worth a lot of money sometimes, presumably like during the health emergency. Now, if this does start hitting the news, then you can bet those politicians will start backside covering like you've never seen before. But I think it's gone beyond the point that any of them can somehow claim innocence or ignorance as to what's been going on. And I wouldn't believe them anyway. Anyway, Just about the only person in Parliament looking to get this issue out into the open is the Reclaim MP Andrew Bridgen. But he says he has somewhere in the region of 30 MPs who support him on this question of getting an inquiry into why these excess deaths are happening. But none of them want to put their head above the parapet. This is unforgivable, given that real people are dying by their thousands every month when maybe they don't need to. As Richard said in one of our previous videos, that's the same as having a 9/11 every 3 to 4 weeks. And just about no one in Parliament or the press is batting an eyelid. What's going on? Is there something that these people as a collective are trying to cover up? If so, what is it? Well, I suspect that a lot of people have very strong suspicions about that, but will not air those suspicions for fear of being cancelled, me included. And this is how they control the proles. A bit like the banking cancel culture, something the Tory government says it will address. But it was not said in very strong terms, something that leads me to think they rather like seeing that censorious practice in action against those who speak out. And more ominously, I haven't seen anything on this from the Prime Minister-in-waiting Keir the Neela Starmer. Nothing. Have you? And that may be a signal that he also rather likes to see the political opponents of the Westminster Uniparty being trammelled by the financial system. And I don't think either of them will be looking to put into law anything that puts having a bank account as a human right. Not only do they need that punishment available right now, they won't want any such right cluttering up their new central bank digital currency. And importantly, if they don't debate on it or vote on it, then there will be no change, and they will be free to impose whatever sanctions they like on those people who refuse to toe their line. And there was a big furore over Nigel Farage and his banking woes, and he's now been rejected by 9 banks on his search for new personal and business facilities. But no furore over excess deaths. And in both cases, the establishment is so far getting the outcome that it desires. And these types of tactics are how they get people to self-censor and to not ask the questions of the authorities that need to be asked. The system either encourages you to keep your opinions to yourself and obey, or they come after things like your bank account. For the last few years, Brexiteers appear to have been seen as fair game. Wonder what will be next? Net zero? Excess deaths? Eating meat? All part of being able to hide information in plain sight, like excess deaths data, knowing no one will ever point to it and ask questions.